Welcome to Spotlight 814, Erie's local theater podcast. I'm Ryan Dawley, and I am actually at work on Zoom with Madeline Jafari. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Madeline Jafari, she is in the cast of Stomp, which will be coming here to Erie's historic Warner Theater. And that's going to be April 23rd and 24th, I believe. Let me check on that. Yeah, got it. All right. So, Madeline, how are you today?
I'm really well. I was just on a week-long break, so I'm a bit maybe more refreshed than usual.
All right, that's good.
Yeah, if you hear a little groveliness though in my voice, I am suffering from some spring allergies. They've hit
Oh,
me,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm doing very well.
That's great. Yeah, the spring allergies really come out in South Bend. I lived around that area a little bit,
Mhm.
and it's pretty rough over there around this time. Um, so tell us a little bit about Stomp. Like, what is it for the people who don't know? I mean, it's been around forever. So,
Sure. Yeah, if you don't know, maybe you've been living under a rock. No. No, I think it's great. People are still discovering it, which is awesome. It's been around since the early 90s. It was formed in Brighton, UK, by two creators, Luke Cresswell and Steve McNicholas, who were sort of just these young punk guys doing a lot of street performing. And they sort of started creating a show out of their street material and took it to a fringe festival, and it was wildly successful. So they launched it there in the UK and then brought it over, I think, in 1994 to New York City, where it was off Broadway for 29 years. It just closed about a year ago in January in New York, but the tours have been running for a very long time too. And the show, I don't know, it's very unique. It's non-narrative, non-speaking. I think that surprises some people sometimes. It's not a musical, although it is highly musical. Um, but it's an hour, 45 minutes of mostly percussion, a lot of comedy, a lot of theater choice making, a lot of improvisation, a lot of movement. And there's 8 people on stage. So it's a very intimately interwoven, ensemble driven kind of show. Um, and yeah, I think people are taken by surprise that it's actually a deeply funny show. It has a very gritty aesthetic, very masculine, very kind of blue collar worker feel to it. But at the end of the day, it's really a comedy.
oh, that's great. That's great. I know. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen it myself, which
Okay.
is surprising, and I
Yeah.
didn't know it was comedy. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Madeline, tell us a little bit about yourself.
hmm I'm a dancer by trade.
Mhm.
I grew up in Austin, Texas, and have been dancing for a very long time, and was very lucky to have really high quality rhythm tap training growing up. I think that's a big part of why I was able to be cast in this show. But I moved to New York for college and went to NYU Tisch for dance. And the college I went to was catty corner to Stomp at the Orpheum Theater in New York. So I literally passed by it every single day. And it was very much on my mind as the job I might want to have. Felt a little bit far-fetched, but I auditioned for the show while I was in college. I think I was maybe 18 or 19, and made it through a couple rounds, but got cut. And then sort of, just thought, okay, maybe that's not for me. But then coming out of the pandemic, a friend sent me, of course, of all places on Instagram, an audition posting for Stomp, and I gave it another shot in 2021 and auditioned for the show. But yeah, I'm mostly contemporary dancer in practice, but grew up really doing kind of a little bit of everything.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the audition process for Stomp?
Mhm. Yeah, the audition um, is tough. The first time I did it, I think it just all happened in one day. But the second time I did it, it was 3 days worth of auditioning, and I think close to 1,000 people, maybe 900, showed up to the audition in 2021. For I think 8 of us maybe to make it. Um, but the first round was kind of like, let's just see how willing you are to kind of make a fool of yourself. There,
Mm.
we did body percussion, where you're kind of just making music with just your boots and your feet and your hands. And we learned a basic groove, and then you had to kind of step forward and improvise. Acapella, I think we were keeping time in the back for our fellow auditionees, but just improvise, and that's basically it. Just kind of short and sweet. Like, how willing are you just to throw yourself into that? And then when we came back on subsequent days, props started becoming more involved. The brooms and excuse me, the uh, more kind of traditional kind of drumming type things with
Right.
with mallets and stuff. They kind of started to look for our personality a little bit more and our willingness to kind of add some character to what we were doing too. But yeah, 3 days of learning quite a lot of material from the show, actually. But no, we didn't have to prepare anything. There was no, come and sing your 32 bars or anything like
Right.
that. They didn't even want a professional headshot. They're like, please just come with a photo of you as you, how you'll look on the day of the audition. No resumes taken, anything like that. It's really like, we did it on stage. It's like, let's just see you on stage with some boots on, trying your best.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So they kind of throw you out there to see like what your physical comedy is going to be like.
Yes,
Right.
I think physical comedy, and of course, then your ability to keep time. I
Of
think
course. Yeah.
that
The
willingness,
preparation.
and then of course, yeah, just the innate sense of rhythm. I think
Mhm.
those two things are kind of those two features that maybe can't be taught, but then everything else they feel very confident they can teach you to do.
Okay. That's really cool. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing this. Like I lived in New York for a while and, I walked past that theater all the time too. And I was like, I wonder what that show's like, but never got
Yeah,
around to seeing it.
yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to that. Um, how old were you when you started dancing?
Let's see. Well, when I started taking dance class, I think I was about 9 years old.
Mhm.
But I was definitely making dances in the living room and moving around all the time from a pretty young age. And
Yeah.
my mom was in musical theater. She did a lot of really great regional theater in Austin. So I was just sort of surrounded by it all the time. And I definitely had a little choreographer's brain and was
Mhm.
making dances. But yeah, I think fourth grade was when we actually like enrolled me in dance class.
Okay, nice. And were you involved in theater as well, or
A little
strictly
bit,
dance?
just peripherally. I mean, I grew up kind of like living under my mom's dressing room table and helping her, with quick changes and that kind of stuff. But I only did just a tiny bit of musical theater, just like the summer before going into college. And I was sometimes involved in really small ways in the productions my mom would be in, but mostly stuck to dance.
Oh, it's really cool though. Yeah, I can imagine that life. Growing up under that table. I get it.
Mhm.
That's cool. Uh, so, what are the biggest challenges for a performer in this kind of show? Because this is very different from your typical like musical stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Um, One thing I find personally very challenging is sort of the maybe unwritten expectation that we will always be making new choices in the show. I think that's very different than if I was like in Wicked or something, where it's
mm,
like it's actually very ideal that you kind of do a very similar thing each night and people expect that of you. But at Stomp, it's very praised to be bold and make new choices, either kind of within your character or musically or with your movement. We have a lot of room for soloing, so in those moments, I think it's very welcome to try new things. And then I think the second thing that's uniquely hard about this show is when you learn a new role, which I actually just did, you teach it to yourself. There's no extra rehearsal called. There's no, here's kind of your binder of like what your track entails. It's you just look at the footage, you ask people questions, and kind of on your own time, you learn all the numbers. So that's a distinct challenge within
yeah,
Stomp. Sure.
oh, that's crazy. Uh, Now, like, what about injuries? Because I know, like, if you're doing stuff like this, you're literally stomping on the ground. Like shin splints happen, things like
Totally.
that.
Totally.
Knees.
We're
Like,
very lucky. We have a full-time physical therapist that
okay,
travels,
good.
so we can get PT when we're at the theater, which is lovely. Um, I think the drummers who don't come from a movement background, they struggle with the injuries a bit more because maybe they're not taking care of themselves as much, or
Right.
they don't maybe do things with as much mindfulness or in good form as the dancers do. So knock on wood, I haven't had anything major happen. Um, But so we spend a lot of time, cooling down after the show and taking baths and doing the things we can. But yeah, if it were not for the PT, I think we would be struggling. The show would not be afloat.
Can imagine. Yeah. You
Yeah.
guys don't have any like understudies or anything, do you?
We don't technically. It's kind of a unique situation where we travel with 12 cast members, but then there's 8 on stage any
Okay.
given night. So effectively, there's 4 people who are kind of like swings, but we're not at the theater. You're just in town.
Okay.
If you really were to go down, they could call you. But yeah, we kind of just make it work, and by oscillating through different casts, we tend to stay healthy and okay enough,
That's great.
show. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Uh, how about do you have like a pre-show ritual or anything? You
To
know,
some degree. It's different. I feel like when I was doing strictly dance jobs, I
mm,
was very ritualistic, kind of like headphones on. I'd have kind of like, I always warm up this body part. I do this exercise, doing kind of like makeup, different things. But with this show, we got a lot going on. We're like rehearsing. We rehearse a lot before the show. Kind of, there's some high risk moments in the show, and depending on like the casting, we need to rehearse them. So we rehearse those, and sometimes you're getting PT, and then we have even like another short rehearsal right before we go on stage. So there's actually not a lot of room to do the personal kind of practices.
yeah.
Um, but I think that's kind of fun because like I actually don't even wear makeup in the show. We just kind of go out as we are. Sometimes we'll even like 2 minutes before going on stage have not thrown on our costume yet. And we choose our own costumes too. So
That's great. Yeah.
a lot of agency, but sometimes that can become stressful. You're like, oh crap, what am I going to wear today? Um, so it kind of, I don't know, it kind of gets scrapped together. I feel like a lot of times, which can feel chaotic, but I think actually really contributes to like the soul of the show staying alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Chaos definitely works. That's
Yeah.
cool. Um, so we have a lot of young dancers that listen to this show. What kind of advice would you have for them who, if they want to grow up and go out and do what you're doing and perform professionally as a dancer?
Hmm. Man, oh my gosh, there's so much, but
Yeah.
I think just letting it stay fun is a big part of it. I think it's so easy to get swept up in other people's expectations of what you're going to do and how you're going to get there. And I think just staying really rooted in that this is something you're passionate about and that it brings you joy is so important. And I think it can sound cliche, but it really allows you to stay connected to your purpose. And I think if you're feeling very driven by joy, then naturally, you'll figure out what steps you need to take to get where you're going. Um, but I think also just who you surround yourself with is so important. I know, like, being in a really great college program was very important to me, just the people I met and being in New York City. And I think I would highly recommend getting out of the town you grew up in, wherever, even if you're in an awesome place. Like I grew up in Austin, it's a great place, but like if you can just kind of get out of there, mix up who you're seeing, maybe you're kind of a big fish in a small pond, go be in a really big pond. I think that can really push you in a super necessary way.
I love that. That's awesome. And we're going to get down to the last couple questions here. What can people expect on April 23rd and 24th at the Warner Theater?
Well, people who see it on the 23rd probably will see something kind of different than the people on the 24th.
Yeah.
Because it can change so much night to night. But there's no intermission, so not too many beers before the show should be had.
Too many.
um, but yeah, it's jam packed with so much stuff. I think you could bring anyone in your family. It's very kid friendly, but it's not watered down for children. We're often compared to Blue Man Group, but
Right.
it's not as child centered as Blue Man Group, but it really speaks to all. They can expect a lot of creativity with objects maybe you're familiar with in your home. We play with sinks and pots and pans and lighters and matchboxes and brooms and dustpans, things that
Mm.
are easily found. So hopefully people walk away with some kind of sense of like, okay, maybe, you see the things in your environment a little differently. Maybe I can make music too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just get creative with your surroundings. That's
Hmm.
cool. I like that. And Madeline, where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
They could find me online. I just made a website actually,
Nice.
madelinejafari.com. So go check that out. Tell me how it is. I did it myself. So I'm also on Instagram. It's Madjaf, Madjaf.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm most active. So that'd be a good place too.
Awesome. Well, Madeline Jafari, thank you so much for joining us today, and for your input on dancing and stuff like that. We have so many dancers that listen to the show, and
Great.
they're going to really enjoy your advice.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, of course. And we look forward to seeing you here in Erie on April 23rd and 24th.
Great. Yes.
All right. See ya.